Change is coming, says Nelson Chamisa. Well, this, I have to admit it, is getting to the point of becoming really tedious. How many times does he keep on promising change? Let's just listen quickly to what he's saying about this change he's talking about this time.
Tichiona ndosaka muchiona hativhunduke hatituduzi paya pandakati ndasiya ndendaona zvangu ndakaona kuti zvaakuitwa izvi aiwa unoona ukaona pachitengeswa chingopisa unoramba ndaisa hatisi wekudhakwa hatiti chikokiyani toda zvinhu zvakangorurama tifambe pamwe mwati waramba basa iri aiwa basa handirambi ndakangotaura ndikati handidi kupinzwa musingwi ini ndiriwe pamusoro pegomo ndo pandakagara kuti zvinhu zvedu zvifambe zvakanaka. Parizwa shoko randataura? Saka musavhunduka kuti zvinofamba sei, zvoita sei, utungamiri hunoita sei, aiwa zvakapera i-delayed match. Isi takatarisa nguva shanduko munyika muno. Wedha munhu anoda kana takatarisa shanduko iri kuzoitika munyika ipi? Muri kupanzwa ipa? Zvokuti rini nenguva iyi tichazotokuudzai. Ise tichiona ndosaka muchiona hativhunduke hatituduzi paya pandakati ndasiya ndendaona zvangu ndakaona kuti zvaakuitwa izvi aiwa unoona ukaona pachitengeswa chingopisa unoramba ndaisa hatisi wekudhakwa hatiti chikokiyani toda zvinhu zvakangorurama tifambe pamwe mwati waramba basa iri aiwa basa handirambi ndakangotaura ndikati handidi kupinzwa musingwi ini ndiriwe pamusoro pegomo ndo pandakagara kuti zvinhu zvedu zvifambe zvakanaka.
Ndiriwe pamusoro pegomo ndo pandakagara. What do you think, Benjamin?
Good day to everybody. Thank you for joining us. You know, if whatever he is selling, I think, you know, only a fool or somebody that does not want to think will buy it. First of all, let's look where he took us and where he's left us. These promises have always, you know, he's easy in making promises. He's always been easy. Promises from his lips are very, very easy just to spew, basically. At every turn, you know, this time it will never happen. This time it's already done. You know, it's already done. We've already won this election. Here we are. Now he's saying he knows, you may not know. You know, it's like somebody that tells you, you sit here, I'm coming back. And then he walks away. You don't have a time frame. It's obvious what he's saying. Zimbabwe's situation will change one day. That's obvious. By him, no. But the situation in Zimbabwe will change. There will be somebody that will step up. There will be individuals that will step up and change the situation in Zimbabwe. That's an obvious case. Zanu PF will not rule forever. It's impossible. The situation in Zimbabwe will change. But, you know, it's all obvious things he's saying, but himself has failed to deliver on one promise. Of all the promises that he has said or that he has uttered, just name one that he has achieved. Absolutely nothing. If anybody has anything that he has achieved, they should, you know, come forward and state it. Then we can start dealing from there. There is absolutely nothing, just hot air.
I think what is important here is that to redefine what the MDC CCC were elected to do. I've explained it before, but I think it is important to explain it again. By the late 1990s, the people of Zimbabwe realized that Zanu PF was determined to remain in power and deny the people a meaningful say in the governance of the country. Zanu PF was prepared to rig the elections to make sure the regime stays in power. The solution was either to go back to the bush and fight the regime, or to risk everything to elect opposition members whose number one task would be to implement democratic changes. Morgan Tsvangirai and company formed their party and they named it Movement for Democratic Change, riding on the wave of the popular sentiment that we needed democratic change. Now, 24 years down the line, you find they've not implemented not even one democratic reform, not even one. In the 24 years, which includes the 5 years in the GNU of 2008 to 2013, when they had the golden opportunity to implement those reforms. As much as the ordinary people may not understand what those reforms are, how they were to be implemented, and that the GNU was the golden opportunity to implement them, as the political leaders, one expects them to know that. And the truth of the matter is, they have failed to implement even one democratic reform. That is what most people are failing to understand here. He is promising change. The real change, the democratic change that they promised from the word go, they failed to implement even one reform in 24 years. Worse still, they've been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, they're giving Zanu PF political legitimacy. They've continued to participate regardless, out of greed. That is one of the most important points that the people of Zimbabwe must understand.
When we come to the people of Zimbabwe, it's we're not ready for democracy, because democracy has got prerequisites, and one of the other prerequisites is, I would like to look at other countries that are enjoying democracy. I'll give you, for example, United Kingdom. The moment the Prime Minister says something that is not true or does not fulfill, the next thing he or she is walking out of 10 Downing Street. They are walking the long walk out. They are voted out by both political parties. Some of his own political members vote him out. Go. You lied. Here is Chamisa that lied not once, not twice. Well, let's forget about the BBC. The lies that he's told us. Right? How then do we find ourselves being his advocate? Surely, the moment you say Chamisa lied, people are up in arms against you. They are already, furious. Why are you doing this? Some defend him as far as saying he's taking a sabbatical. Chamisa is out of politics. This is not a person that is out of politics. This is a person that is very much into politics. He was just waiting for the situation to simmer down. And the worst part, you find newspapers writing, a very sweet story. Hope from Chamisa, change is coming soon. Give me a break. Let's say as it is. The guy promised us something. He failed to deliver, not once, but twice. And we cannot blame to say, he is the problem. Do not promise something that you cannot deliver. And then we just expect him, we welcome him with open arms. Our savior is back. We will defend. Come on, guys. We are not ready for democracy. We are not ready at all.
Well, the other aspect that must be remembered here is that there are occasions when Chamisa has promised that change is coming and actually named the kind of change that was coming and the date it was coming. One of the changes that is named was that MDC Alliance was going to win the elections, the 2018 elections. When was it coming? At the end of the vote. He promised that he had, MDC had stringent measures to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, and the party will win those elections. That was in 2018. As we know, that was a lie. Because the results came and Zanu PF had once again won the presidency and the majority in parliament. He never went back to say, sorry, I had lied there. He immediately went on the offense, accusing Zanu PF of rigging the elections. The very thing that he had said he had stringent measures to stop happening. SADC, the AU that year, did just endorse the elections results. But the European Union came up with a detailed report making 23 recommendations to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. Nelson Chamisa and his MDC friends did not implement even one token reform. And yet, come 2023 elections, he was back on the road again, making another promise that C was going to win big. And this time, because he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. When was that victory for C coming? End of the elections. This is him telling people that change was definitely coming.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan yaMwari haifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
So there we are. He was saying that the regime, he was preparing for his cabinet because he was confident. Denga Arikoni would deliver. He had promised it with the hashtag God is in it, and promised that God was in it. God had promised him that C was going to win. and he was setting up his cabinet already. We know that was not true, because Zanu PF once again blatantly rigged the elections and won the parliamentary as well as the presidency. So there we are. He promised change, named the date, and promised it not. The date came, but the promised change did not happen. He even evoked the name of God in making these promises. God does not lie. God has promised us there's going to be change. And yet the change did not come. This is the reality, the political reality in Zimbabwe. This is the political reality with Chamisa's change promises of change that people must seriously look into.
Without reforms in place, Zanu PF will rig elections and get away with it. I do not know how people fail to understand this simple concept. Zanu PF, controls every aspect of an election, from vote counting, voter registration, delimitation exercises, printing of the ballot, verification of the voters' roll, all those things. So when Chamisa stands and declares like this, without any changes, which are without any reforms, how do you expect to win? We may clap hands for him. It's only our foolishness that will allow us to clap, because we should know Zanu PF does this because ABCD is not in place. For 24 years, we've been doing the same thing over and over again. Come election time, participate. The day after, Zanu PF shows that they've rigged the elections. We cry foul. We cry for Sadak, help us. This guy, help us, and so on and so on. And we let the person that actually influenced us to say, let's go in our numbers. We will outperform. Nothing has been said. The excuse is he's taken a sabbatical. Leave him be. He's out of politics now. This is not a person that is out of politics. This is a person that is just keeping a low profile and coming back and making his way back into politics. Here he is now promising you. How does he get to promise you something that he's failed to fulfill not once but twice as a presidential candidate? Twice as a guardian of your vote, because you gave him. I think it's now inexcusable for us to continue believing, all this nonsense day in and day out.
The other aspect that people must consider when we're talking of Chamisa's empty promises is that he has been promising to do something, knowing fully well that it is the wrong thing. He has been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, you are giving Zanu PF legitimacy. I've used this quotation from David Coulthard's book because it is the essence of that issue. In this quotation, David Coulthard is admitting that the 2013 election process was so flawed, so illegal, that the only logical thing to do was to withdraw. Then he explains why he and his fellow MDCT and MDCN colleagues did not withdraw. Each side feared that the other side would participate and win the gravy train seats that Zanu PF was dangling in front of them. Zanu PF, ever since the 2008 GNU, had learned that as long as they allow the opposition to win some seats, they will get away with this facade that Zimbabwe is a healthy and functioning democracy. The GNU had forced Mugabe to accept the reality that he could not get away with a de facto one-party state anymore. So the MDC guys knew Zanu PF is offering some seats to keep up the facade that it is a healthy and functioning democracy. And they would not withdraw because of greed. Here is Margaret Longo explaining that very point. Specifically, why MDC leaders went on to participate, to take up their seats, to participate in last year's elections, and then to take up their seats, even after SADC and the AU had said the election process was flawed.
A lot of savings because of the change of currency. So you can't actually embark on any project, because if you embark on any project, there's no guarantee that you sail through.
You keep talking about corruption. How deep, how endemic is corruption in this country? From you, I mean, you sit in the Central Committee, and I'm sure you still have colleagues.
And it's like tea. Chai, Kenyans call it chai. It's like tea. Now it's no longer in the hierarchy only. It's now it is developed even in the grassroots. It's even more ways in the grassroots, because these are the grassroots people who see their leaders being corrupt. So they are thinking that it's a type of life that should exist. And then the corruption is shrunk right to the grassroots. There's now corruption everywhere. Worse off with the leadership. Because they have a look. You asked me a very good question. You were in the Central Committee. You were a member of Parliament. You were this and that. Why are you feeling the pinch? It's because, I didn't believe in corruption. I'm not a selfish person. I'm a selfless person. And I'm like a social worker. Politics is not a business. This is what I want to remind most of our MPs and other people.
Do you think they look at it as a business?
Yes, they look at it as a business. Because they look at it as a business, seriously. Because the moment they go, business and employment creation. Because if they go to Parliament, you are employed. You get a car, you get a stable salary, and you are paid until your term is over. Already you are employed. If you're out of employment.
If you serve 2 terms, you get a pension?
You get a pension. Then already, this is why people kill in politics. They kill to be in Parliament. This is why we have violence in this country. Because there is no employment. The only employment which is there is in politics. There is no other outside employment. So for them, A very good example is, look at what happened to CCC, the Triple C party. Have a look. When they lost, when they said they were rigged, what I expected from them, I expected all parliamentarians to say, we are not going to go to participate in a rigged system, and we are not going to sit in a rigged parliament, because the elections have been rigged. So all of us were not going to parliament. Imagine what could have happened. We could have gone into new elections. There's no way Zanu PF was going to roll alone.
You think so?
Yes.
Do they care?
Caring or not caring, the public would have forced them, because the majority of the people would want representation in parliament.
But they went anyway?
But they went. They realized that, you heard them complain, I used my own money to be in parliament. But what about me who have voted for you? I used my own money. So the idea is to recover. Is it a business where you want to recover your losses? Is it a business? Politics, is it a business where everyone else, when you get in parliament, you want to recover your losses? A good example is now, parliamentarians have been elected. I don't know when we last saw our member of parliament in this.
When you come to MDC, members of parliament, they took up their seats even when SADC had said the election process was flawed. They still went ahead and took up their seats. Even the likes of Tendai Biti, David Coulthard, they were defending that decision, claiming that those were liberated zones. Chamisa himself tried to talk his MPs not to take up their seats. And that is exactly what Margaret Donk was talking about there. They told him, I used my own money for the campaign. So they were recovering their own expenses. They'd long ago forgotten about implementing reforms. This is the message that the people of Zimbabwe must take home. Opposition were elected to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. Now they are participating in these flawed elections out of greed. That message has got to be hammered in. I don't know what is the problem with some people. You can accept it or refuse it. It doesn't matter. The truth of the matter is that is the political reality in Zimbabwe.
I very much agree with you on that. I also fail to understand how people are failing to grasp that concept. It's the evidence is overwhelming. The evidence is clear. They have spoken, they themselves, members of Triple C, members of MDC, they have said that we have invested our money. We should be, and these are hard-earned seats. We have fought for those seats. We have campaigned using our own money. In other words, they're saying whatever you are suggesting doesn't matter. It is me that won this seat fair and square. By them so doing and saying such a thing, you are saying that the election is free and fair for your part that you've won. How then do you go crying and saying, SADC, help us, for something that you had earned yourself? It then now doesn't make any sense. You are writing to SADC to say, the election was not free and fair, but I am going to keep what I have won. Who's going to help you from there? The problem now, as you can see, is not Zanu PF. Zanu PF is a big problem. Let's put it aside. The problem that we have, that we're not getting any outside help from all these organizations, is because of Triple C, is because of Nelson Chamisa. He was on record also saying, previous video, that I will win. I've already put on, I'm already starting to form my own cabinet. He guaranteed a clear win. So now that you have lost when you have guaranteed, who is going to help you? You are going to appear just like a sore loser. Period. This is why we are in this mess. 24 years in, and now we are going to another election. He's already gearing up. From what he's saying, I can see he's already gearing up for another election as things stand.
Well, to take up on what you just said there, Ben, the truth of the matter is the change that Chamisa is saying is coming is another promise of him promising that whatever new party is going to launch is going to win the 2028 elections. And he's going to make that promise on the basis of nothing other than another lie that he has come up with ways of making sure that those elections are free, fair, and credible. Or else that he has come up with ways of winning rigged elections. He has found ways of plugging the vote rigging loopholes, as he said last time. The tragedy here is that many people will go ahead and believe him. This is at the heart of our problem in Zimbabwe. We have an electorate that will willingly accept whatever the politicians tell them. For the opposition, they'll believe the opposition would win, rig the elections. For Zanu PF, those who support Zanu PF, they'll believe in Vision 2030 that things are getting better, when in reality, nothing is getting better. Things are getting worse. They've been told since Mugabe, since independence, with his mass prosperity, Gutsaro Shinji, and people believed it. This is at the heart of our problem. We have an electorate that is extremely ignorant, naive, and very gullible. And this is what both Zanu PF and the opposition have exploited to stay in power. The worst thing that can happen now is people believing, Chamisa, that change is coming, that this time he's going to win, that this time he has come up with strategies to win rigged elections. Because without any reforms being implemented, Zanu PF will definitely be rigging those elections. So he's coming up with another plan to win rigged elections. And people will believe him. Last time, nearly 2 million Zimbabweans out there believed him and voted for him. And it is widely believed that 3 to 4 million Zimbabweans, mostly in the diaspora, believed the lie too, and they cheered and applauded the participation. Some of them were even sending text messages or even speaking to their relatives in the rural areas and in the urban centers everywhere in Zimbabwe, that they must participate. Some of them were even going to the extent of threatening that I will never send you any help if you do not participate in these elections, because they were so convinced that Triple C had plugged the vote rigging loopholes. That is at the heart of our problem. SADC, when they saw Zimbabweans participating in those flawed elections in their millions, forget the rural people who were frog marched to attend rallies and then frog marched to go and vote. If I was in the rural area, I'll do the same myself, because the regime has got the mechanism to punish them if they don't. But we cannot say the same thing about those in the urban centers. We cannot say the same thing about those in the diaspora. We should know better. We're encouraging the participation. And as long as millions of Zimbabweans participate in these flawed elections, if we do that, the same thing in 2028, in my view, SADC will find it very difficult to deny Zanu PF legitimacy. And the other reason why SADC will find it difficult is that in this case here, even if they were to discipline Zanu PF, as they did in 2008, force the regime into a government of national unity, if the two main actors are Chamisa and company on the one hand, and Mnangagwa and company on the other, what is the difference with the GNU of 2008 to 2013? What makes you believe that these same people will go and implement reforms? If I was SADC, I would say to myself, I have no confidence that any good will come out of this. So why interfere in the process? If Zimbabweans participate in 2028 because they believe Chamisa's promise that change is coming again, then we have got ourselves to blame for it. It will be 48 years of rigged elections. How tragic is that? In this day and age, 48 years after independence, and we still cannot hold free, fair, and credible elections. Not for somebody doing somebody else a favor, for our own good. I think that is a damning testimonial to the whole nation. Thank you very much, Ben. Do you want to give your closing remarks?
In closing, I would say the change that Chamisa is talking about is talking a change in government. That is not what Zimbabwe needs. Zimbabwe needs change both on the political front and on the economic side. And for all these to come to fulfillment, we need to have a free, fair, and credible election, a free, fair political environment. That is the change that we need, such that tomorrow, even if we have a problem to say a politician comes up, promises us lies, we can easily get rid of them. They don't have absolute power over us. Look at countries that enjoy democracy. How many presidents have been, have stepped down because the people have rejected, parliament has rejected. Your own people should be able to reject you if you are not fulfilling or you are not, being forthcoming. That is how democracy works. Chamisa is not the only person that will bring change. Change will come from individuals. Change will come from us as Zimbabweans, starting to think for ourselves, starting to reason for ourselves. All this, what he is saying, Chamisa is saying, is beautiful to the ear. It's nice to hear, but it's all hot air. At the end of the day, it benefits you absolutely nothing. We need change, and change will only come when we start thinking for ourselves. Period.
Thank you very much, Ben. I think I'll just play a short clip of Dr. Nevas Mumba, the chairperson of the SADC Observer Mission, telling us once again what we need if we really want to see meaningful democratic change in Zimbabwe.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, let me be clear that the changing of any dynamic or situation in any of our African countries is a preserve of the citizens of that country, in this case, the Zimbabwean people. An election observation team goes there to support the process by observing and being able to release a statement of our observations that, for instance, in Zimbabwe, we raised several issues of transparency and also the independence of the Electoral Commission and things which happen in many other countries, you know. But at the end of the day, once we produce the report and make it available to the Zimbabwean authorities and eventually to the Zimbabwean people, it really remains the preserve of the Zimbabwean people to fight for the freedoms that they need themselves and to correct those issues that have been observed. The reason why we have multiple observation missions is to ensure that, you know, there is a comparison, you know, taking place between the SADC report and the European Union report, the African Union report, and then they can see that those issues that repeat themselves in all these reports, it's up to the Zimbabwean people. And this is where I appeal to all political leaders, not only in Zimbabwe, especially the elections that are coming in Mozambique, they're coming in South Africa, in DRC. We have to make up our minds that, look, at the end of the day, once the people in the country are given an opportunity to monitor the elections, because they also monitor, it starts not during the day of the elections. They must make sure that the constitutional lacunas that can affect a good election are dealt with months before the election. And they must fight to ensure that there's a level playing field. They should never wait for the time when the election is taking place. They must also insist that the electoral commissions and the governments in those countries abide by international norms in holding democratic elections. And this fight must be more vicious before the election comes.
That is the condition for any meaningful change in Zimbabwe. Implement the democratic reforms to ensure that we've got free, fair, and credible elections. I don't see Chamisa doing that. So all the promises he's making of change is coming. It's just all hot air. The best thing that ordinary Zimbabweans can do now is to make sure that they don't fall into the same trap and believe Chamisa's lies and participate in a flawed election process to give Zanu PF legitimacy. The rules for free, fair, and credible elections are there for a purpose. If you do not want free, fair, and credible elections, then you should not complain that the elections are rigged. It is unbelievable how some people continue to believe they can win rigged elections, even after 44 years of rigged elections. That is simply unbelievable. We really need to get our act together as a nation and stop this madness, this double curse of rigged elections and bad governance. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our children. We owe it to posterity to finally get our act together and end this curse of rigged elections. Thank you very much for those of you who were able to join. And thank you very much, Ben, for joining the discussion tonight.
Thank you. Good night.